All right, welcome back to my teeny tiny little channel. As I'm waiting for my T-Bird to stop smoking, whatever the heck that was, a generator burned up, I don't know. I decided to come over and play with the Corvette. I was gonna move some stuff around and put the key in, went to start it. It acted like it was gonna start for a second and then stopped. I've had that happen before, so I just, turned the key into the off position and then went to start it again. Car's turning over just fine, it won't start. Typically this feels like a fuel problem, like it's not getting any gas, but I mean this thing's fuel injected, so it should pop pretty quick. So I'm gonna rule out the fuel. I think I'm having this infamous problem with this car where the contacts on the inside of the ignition switch are, I don't know, corroded or something. But I was getting, let's see if it'll come up again. I'm not getting a display. Okay, never mind. I was gonna show you the display up here where I got the code, or not really a code, but like the, I don't know what it is. It pops up and it says something about the charging system. Now, I'm not even getting that anymore. So, I've got 12 volts at the battery. The fuse for the crank, is it crank switch or something with the clutch crank, I don't know. That's good. I'm getting power through that. I checked some of the other ignition fuses in there. Fuses are all good. So I'm narrowing it down to most likely it's going to be this ignition switch is going bad, or it could be corroded wires at the starter solenoid, possibly alternator. I looked at the alternator, everything looks fine up there. I did not look underneath the car yet, but I'm almost certain that this issue is going to be in that ignition switch, because this car was giving me issues not long ago after I drive it for a while and park it and come back out, try to start it, and it wouldn't want to start. It was just giving me all kinds of weird stuff on the dash. So I turned it off, wait a second, and then it fired up the second time or third time. So that, from what I've read, was an indication that this switch is going bad. The contacts are corroded on the inside. Who knows? It's not difficult to get out, so I may just start tearing all this stuff off and see if I can pop that out and take a look at it. So to get the ignition switch, you got to take off all of your center console thing, all over there. You got to take off this bottom kick panel. It's not difficult to do. It's just a little time consuming. There's 2, 4, 6, I think like 8 little screws. And then there's 2 bolts that hold this in. And then you got to unplug that connector. There's a really good video. There's probably a few videos on YouTube about how to take all this center stuff off. And it's probably going to be way easier in your car than it was in mine, because I have this crazy Pioneer stereo with this giant face on it. It took me forever to figure out how that thing came off. And it probably took me longer to figure out how to get the face of the stereo off than it did to get everything else out. Very simple, 10mm bolts all around, and then a few of these little Torx bit screws. I'm doing it in my driveway, so that's how easy this is. Here's my ignition switch, and I'm pretty sure I see right off the bat, I see the problem, and we're gonna get to cleaning this thing up. So if you look very closely, you can see a couple of those top contacts, and they look like they got some corrosion and crud. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed that this is the issue. This was on my list to do. The car just kind of forced my hand into doing it sooner than what I had originally planned on doing. And that seems to be my problem. Let me show you. There are 2 little burned up contacts, one right there and one right there. So we're gonna clean those up. We're gonna clean off these little arms, and then we can reassemble. Look at that, something so tiny just wreaks havoc. There's a really good write-up that I found on one of the forums on how to disassemble this and to get to where I've gotten so far. I'm not going to put all this in my video because I'm literally reading through that article and doing it as I'm going along. But I will put a link to that article so that you can check it out. It's actually very easy to follow along, and doing this so far, you got to be patient. You got to take your time. But literally all I've done so far was pop this green cap off, and it's got tabs on 3 different sides Just take 3 screwdrivers, slide them in gently and work it evenly, and this will pop up. Now what happened to me was one of these little, I don't even know what you call them, but one popped off and went flying over here on my bench. So luckily I was able to follow that article and see exactly how it goes back together. So I'm in good shape. You can even tell by the pins on the top here how it's going to go back together. Again, just take your time, especially when you're dealing with something like this. Don't get in a hurry. I'm gonna get some sandpaper and start cleaning these contacts up really well, and then I'll get to reassembling it. I don't really want to get too deep into this switch. I just want to make sure all the brass little contacts and stuff like that are clean, and I think I'll be okay. I'm almost, like I said, 90% sure, probably even more now, that this is the actual it. We're gonna plug this in and see. Haha! Success! My door is not ajar, it's just open. Low oil, huh? All right, check that out. But the car starts, yay! I mean, it looks like a bomb went off, but I'll get all this put back together. Fired right up, no issues. So that was the culprit, that those dirty contacts on the ignition switch. This tiny little screw has to go through this hole right there, this aftermarket panel, and it goes in, I don't know, another 3 inches or so before it finally goes where it needs to. And trying to balance it on the end of a screwdriver is fairly tough. So I found this cool little doodad tool, and now I've got a magnet holding on to it, which has essentially magnetized my screw. So hopefully I can get it in there without it falling off. Ooh, I can wiggle it a little bit. Look at that, not going anywhere. Yeah, creative tools. That was it. That was my problem. It was the ignition switch and the dirty contacts. Just took the car for a quick spin. Runs great. Never really had any issues with this car. This car is pretty amazing. I'm very impressed with the Z06. I'm going to give you the quick cliff notes of how to get everything apart so that you can get in there and try this yourself if you need to. Anybody can do this. I just did this in my driveway. Here's what you need to start with, and here's how it comes apart. Open up your center console. You're going to pop these 2 little covers off. 10 millimeter. There's a nut there and there. Then you're going to pop this out. And underneath here, you're going to unplug your cigarette lighter. You're going to pop off another 10 mil here, another 10 mil nut underneath here. This will slide back. This piece has to lift up. But before you do that, over here, you're going to have 2 more screws. They're going to be T10s, I believe that's what I used. In my car, there was one hidden behind this button. In a factory car, there should be another one right over here. Then you've got to pop off this little plastic doodad. There's going to be 1 more screw up here, also a T10. Then you got to work on getting your whatever knee bolster taken down. On my car, I have Velcro here because I guess it's notorious that these break, but there is another T-screw head right here, and there's one closer up over here, both T10s. I took those out and my whole panel just came down. Once you do that, you can get to your switch. This little black cover will pop off, and mine had a wire connected to it. It was kind of odd, but it like wrapped through and I had to unplug it to pull it through. There's 2 bolts right here that are going to hold the ignition switch in. Those are also 10 millimeters. And once you take those out, you'll push it in and then lower it from the bottom. Then you can take out the 2 electrical connectors. There's going to be a black one and one that's like clear yellowish color, whatever. There's 1 little clip on each one. Just be very careful. Lift it with a screwdriver. I was able to get it with my finger. Just slide them back out and your ignition switch is free. This whole process was pretty simple. The one thing that took me the longest to do was figure out how to get this faceplate off my stereo. I didn't have like a model number or anything like that, so I had to do quite a bit of Googling to figure that out. And then Once I got that off, everything else was easy peasy. So that's it. That's the fix for, well, I guess if you're getting that low voltage error thing on your dashboard, or you're having issues with the car not wanting to start, check your fuses first. And then if your fuses are good, go to your ignition switch next. And, you know, it didn't cost me anything to fix this, just my time. So don't pay somebody to do this. Just give it a shot. It's not difficult. Don't be afraid to get in there and take these pieces apart. Working on these cars, it's like working on a giant model. If you've ever built a model car as a kid, it's the same exact thing. All the pieces went together in the factory. They come apart one way, they go back together one way. And if you get stuck on something, I promise there is a YouTube video out there somewhere, especially on these cars, that will guide you through it. So thanks for watching. Stay hungry, stay foolish.